our February 14th, 2022 regular meeting of Belleville City Council. And let me start off by wishing everybody a happy Valentine's Day. We gather today under the terms and conditions of the province's modified Step 3 restrictions, which are currently to end on February the 17th, later this week. But in the for assisting, and I also want to thank all members of council for their cooperation and flexibility in meeting under these unusual circumstances as permitted by the provincial government. While we all know the need for cooperation during the best of times, these virtual meetings are difficult and awkward, and I look to my colleagues for extra cooperation as we conduct the business necessary for the operations of the City of Belleville. For those watching on the city's streaming service, or I would point out to you that our agenda and all the reports that we'll be dealing with at today's meeting are on the city website at www.belleville.ca under the agenda, minutes, and live meeting video link on the left side of the screen. If you click on that link, it'll take you to the calendar. And if you click on February 14th, it'll bring you to the agenda for today's meeting. Inside the agenda, as you scroll through, you will see blue hyperlinks. Call and the other members are present electronically. I'll now call on the City Clerk and Director of Corporate Services, Mr. Matt McDonald, to lead us in a moment of reflection.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chambers minds that think, hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Thank you. My colleagues, I'm wondering if I could just get some feedback. I'm told that I was breaking up a little bit earlier. Is it working okay now? Okay. Well, aren't we all going to be happy when we're back in person? And this looks like this will be our last virtual meeting. The next meeting on March the 14th, we expect to be back in person in council chambers. So thank you for everyone's further cooperation. Item 3 on the agenda, disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Does anyone have anything they'd like to disclose today? Seeing none, there are no public meetings today, so we'll move to item 5, reading and confirmation of minutes of the regular council meeting of January 24th, 2022, and the regular in-camera meeting minutes of January 24th, 2022. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Millette. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. There are no deputations today, nor is there any correspondence. So we'll move to item 8, Committee of the Whole, and I'm looking for a motion to go into Committee of the Whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations and resolutions with myself in the chair. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. So reports. The agenda shall include under reports items that warrant individual attention from council. 8A1 is the operation and maintenance service agreement for the Belleville Pollution Control Plant and the Jane Forrester Park Pre-Treatment Facility. It is the General Manager of Environmental Services report number GMES 2022-03. And the resolution is that in accordance with section 30.3, sole and sourcing, approval and reporting of the city's purchasing bylaw number 2021-99, the submission from the Ontario Clean Water Agency be renewed and accepted to provide services for the operation and maintenance of the Belleville Pollution Control Plan and the Jane Forrester Park Pre-Treatment Facility, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor McCaw. Any questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8A2, Municipal Modernization Program Transfer Payment Agreement, the Accounting Coordinator's report number AC 2022-02. And the resolution is that a bylaw to approve and authorize a transfer payment agreement dated February 14, 2022 between Her Majesty the Queen in right of the province of Ontario, represented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for the province of Ontario, and the city of Belleville, related to funding provided by the province of Ontario to the municipality under the Municipal Modernization Program as referenced in the Accounting Coordinator's Report, AC 2022-02, be prepared for council's consideration, and that the 2021 capital budget item number 1.091, expansion of City View Program planning services, be increased by $7,200 for a total budget of $209,900, funded through an increase of $136,400 from the Municipal Modernization Program and a reduction of $32,300 from the Building Code Reserve Fund and $96,900 from the Capital Levy Reserve Fund. Okay, moved by Councillor Carr and seconded by Councillor Sandison. Any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 8A3, contract number TOS 2022-04 regarding surface treatment contract, various locations. It is the Capital and Fleet Asset Managers Report, CFAM 2022-02. And the resolution is that the tender submission from Greenwood Paving Limited be accepted for contract number TOS 2022-04 regarding surface treatment contract in the total amount of $784,024.74, this being the lowest cost tender received, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Can I please get a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Kelly and Councillor Sandison. Any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 8A4, adoption of the Parkland and Recreation Master Plan for the City of Belleville. It is the Manager of Operations Planning and Development, Transportation and Operations Services Report, MOPD 2022-01, and the resolution is that pursuant to the Manager of Operations Planning and Development Report, MOPD 2021-01, Belleville Council adopts the City of Belleville Parkland and Recreation Master Plan. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Alsap and seconded by Councillor Millette. Any questions or discussion of this item? Councillor Alsap, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to voice my support for the plan. I think it came together in a really great way. Lots of feedback from the public, and we're going to see changes for some of our more underserved sporting communities like pickleballers, basketball players, cyclists as well. So very excited about it and look forward to seeing some of those developments.
Yes, and it's been a very long time since we've done this. So anyone else on this? Seeing no further comments, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Congratulations, everyone. That's a big step for our community. Thank you. 8A5, contract number Parks 2022-01 regarding Jackson Woods Playground. It is the Manager of Operations Planning and Development, Transportation and Operations Service Report number MOPD 2022-02. And the resolution is that the request for proposal submission from ABC Recreation be accepted for contract number PRKS 2022-01 regarding Jackson Woods Playground in the total amount of $127,170.43, this being the most qualified proposal received, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor McCaw and Councillor Kelly will second it. Any questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 8A6, air handler replacement. The acting property manager's report number RCCSPM 2022-01. And the resolution is that in accordance with section 30.3, sole and single sourcing, approval and reporting of the city's purchasing bylaw number 2021-99, the quotation from Train Canada ULC be accepted for the HVAC unit replacement in the total amount of $62,489, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Alsap will move it, seconded by Councillor Millette. Thank you. Any questions or comments on this item? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 8A7, supply of boilers for the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center. It is the acting property manager's report number RCCSPM 2022-02, and the resolution is that the request for proposal submission from Smith Energy Incorporated be accepted for the supply of 6 boilers in the total amount of $191,339.37, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Sanderson is moving, seconded by Councillor Alsop. Any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 8A8, pop-ups on the Bay Business Development Plan recommendations. It is the Manager of Economic and Strategic Initiatives report number ECDEV 2022-05, and the resolution is slightly different than what is written in your agendas, everyone, and I'll highlight that. The resolution is that pursuant to the Manager of Economic and Strategic Initiatives report number ECDEV 2022-05, the pop-ups on the Bay Business Plan be accepted by council as presented, and that recommendations 1 and 3 through 7 as outlined in the pop-ups on the Bay Business Plan be supported for implementation in 2022, and that $70,000 be referred to the 2022 operating budget for consideration. So that change is moving from 110,000 to 70,000, and that is a resolution that we'll consider. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any questions or comments on this item? Councillor Millette and then Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Your Worship. 2 questions. Well, actually, yes, 2 questions. What's the purpose of the reduction in the number to the operating budget? For anyone who can answer.
Ms. Post sent me an email late this morning with this suggestion, and I'll let her explain to everybody.
Okay.
Through His Worship to Councillor Millette. So the purpose of the reduction, as we were going through operating budget, we had included a $40,000 amount in the pop-up budget for parks support. But as we went through the operating budget, it became very clear we didn't need to do that. And so that $40,000 amount has been removed.
Okay, and my second question, thank you very much, Ms. Post. My second question is referring to item 3 on page 212 of the report. Dedicate $25,000 of the 2022 capital budget for a crushed gravel or permeable service courtyard. Now, I went back and watched, not being on the committee, I went back and watched it a second time, and I've had a number of people reach out to me, and I'd come to the same conclusion. How wedded to how wedded to crushed gravel are we for this courtyard area? And I guess my question is, did PACE take into consideration the EcoCaster permeable parking surface similar to what we installed at the East End Park? A gap
And the Stanley Parquet.
Stanley Parquet,
Okay.
yes. Was that discussed, Ms. Post?
Through the chair to Councillor Millette. So there were a number of options discussed. Haven't 100% decided on any one. Anything that we do in this area does have to be reviewed by the Conservation Authority. Certainly a good section of this area is in the floodplain. So we know that there are very few objections to gravel in the floodplain versus other more hard permanent surfaces. So that is an option we will consider in our discussions with the Conservation Authority.
Okay, and because I I have difficulty adding a gravel area in this area, as do several of the people who reached out to me, and I'm quite impressed whenever I visit the EcoCaster parking surface in the park. And we had Quinte Conservation's cooperation and working with us on that one. So I'm hoping that might be the route we go here. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Millette. Councillor Carr and then Councillor Alsop.
Yes, thank you. And some of my questions were answered. Just generally speaking, though, it's great to see this initiative continue to grow. And, you think back a few years ago that Zwick's was highly underutilized as a public space. And so it's great to see this continue to grow year over year, and, to see the conceptual plans and what's planned for the future is certainly good. And I would just say, yes, I would strongly support some type of surface that is obviously environmentally friendly. We recognize the fact that it's a previous landfill there, so there's already issues there, and certainly I know Quinte Conservation is quite diligent to make sure that we're putting the environment on the forefront. So I know that I've got concerns from people as well, and know they'll be well taken care of. So a very exciting project here, and looking forward to seeing it this summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Alsop and then Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just voicing my support for my colleagues. Certainly, I received some questions about the gravel as well. So great that we're going to be looking into that, and excited to see where the pop-ups go for 2022. And hopefully, it's a more open year and a busy year for them, and another great year of growth.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just wanted to mention too, this is the pop-ups. We've had lots of good meetings over the last several months. So as part of the Zoom get-togethers with the Strexer Harrod Consulting Group, I believe based out of Peterborough, and Manager Post and her team, we've had representation from the Chamber, Jill Raycroft, Louisa Sorrentino from the Downtown District, and we've all come to the conclusion that the pop-ups on the bay, which was started 3 years ago, just for those new to the city and watching today, and just a little refresher for everybody. The first year we dealt with flooding, the last 2 years, the pandemic, and we are ripe. The city is ripe for a great summer in 2022. Seems like everything's starting to work in our favor. And we're excited about this. I know the Economic Development Destinations Committee has had lots of conversations about the pop-ups. They're 100% behind this. So with good weather, and people are excited to get back out. Doug Stevenson from the Bay Quinte Regional Marketing Board, very supportive with his team as well. This is going to be a record year at Zwick's Park. I'll go on record as saying I'm going to guarantee it. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else on this item? So just before I call the question on it, I think, Councillor Kelly, as chair of the EDDC and Manager Post, you've heard loud and clear some of our concerns regarding the type of action we take to prevent the area from getting very, very muddy and unusable. And that was the concern, and that's what the gravel discussion was about. And certainly we have started with these permeable parking stones, which basically, for the public watching, there are holes within it so that it allows vehicles to be able to go onto a parking area without wrecking the ground and making it into a muddy area, but and allows the water to drain at the same time. So it's there. And, I think staff will do their very best. I don't know if we can guarantee that would be the case. We still will have to deal with it, but staff have heard loud and clear. And by passing this resolution this year, we are, basically endorsing the new format, the new location, the way that we're proposing to have other activities to drive more traffic, as Councillor Kelly has talked about, making this a bigger and a better event, having more pop-up vendors because we're getting more, more stalls or more units. These things are all good, and I do agree that, as we got some very good news today about the acceleration of our reopening plans, people are going to be embracing this summer, and they're going to want to go to these events. And what better place to go than the Belleville pop-ups I don't know of. So so we're looking forward to going, and I'm really grateful for council for supporting this originally, and then allowing it to grow as we went through those pandemic years. So with that, I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And the last of the 8A items, 8A9, the City of Belleville Strategic Plan and update. And it is the Chief Administrative Officer's report number CAO 2022-01. And the resolution is that pursuant to the Chief Administrative Officer's report number CAO 2022-01, City Council adopt the updated City of Belleville Strategic Plan. Can I please get a mover and a seconder for this? Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Millette. And just before I open it up for discussion, I do want to point out or pass along some congratulations. We started this review before COVID. In the summer of 2019, we started the strategic plan, and this plan has been in place since before 2012. And to Mr. Beauvais' credit, he didn't give up on it when we had other challenges as we managed through the pandemic. And there are a number of changes in the report that council through three meetings, I guess, we had on the strategic plan, went through and provided that input. So you will see the additions, I believe, are in blue, and the changes are with the red strikeout that you have in your packages. And with that, I will open it up for any questions or comments. Anyone have any questions or comments? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yeah, it has been, there's some substantive changes. My old editor's eye caught one where it may just have been a typo under City Center sustainability, where we have included ensuring the presentation of heritage, and I would assume that in the final version that will be preservation as opposed to presentation. But again, sorry to pick.
Oh, we appreciate that. So I see CO Beauvais nodding his head in agreement. So okay. It is preservation.
Yeah, and one other note, will we be having any further input on the final version of this? Because under the issue of environment, we did this past year, pass a climate emergency declaration. We are paying heed on a local level, joining over 400 municipalities across Canada, and emphasizing climate change in considering all of our environmental impacts. I was just wondering if there's an opportunity to perhaps put a little more emphasis in that report in that regard.
There is, Councillor Millette, but this is the opportunity. So a recommendation should be brought forward, and then we can, consider it to be amended to include that moving forward. Do you have a suggestion of where you would like it and what you would like to put in?
Well, on the where it says environment is defined as a strategic theme, as we need to protect and enhance the quality of our natural environment to ensure there's clean water and air and a livable environment for the benefit of current residents and future generations. And under strategic objectives, I guess another bullet point in recognizing the impacts of city activities on climate change should be heeded. I should have possibly then penciled something a little more comprehensive, but if anybody, we made the declaration, and this being a strategic plan for the city, I think it should be under the environment section. It's a natural.
Sure. Can I make a suggestion, Councillor Millette? If you go earlier in the report under the community vision section,
yeah.
The last area talks about environmentally responsible. And I think we can achieve what you want by changing the last sentence to take out that word both and say our activities municipally, industrially, and recreationally will respect the environment. I know that's general, but I think it gets to what you're talking about, that our corporate practices will be evaluated to make sure that they are the least environmentally damaging, or that we're always striving to be more environmentally friendly. Does that work for you?
Yeah, and it underscores it, and that does it for me there. So if we can
I ask you one more question then? Because I think you made a good point regarding our declaration of the climate emergency. Do you want that somewhere in this document, or does the declaration stand on its own?
The declaration stands on its own, but just underscoring the importance of the recognition that we have to be mindful in every aspect of city operations, of our impact on the environment and the planet. So thanks. Thank you for that, Your Worship.
Okay. Mr. Bove and Mr. McDonald, are you good with that change on the pages don't have numbers, so I can only refer to it as the community vision page. Go ahead, Mr. Bove.
Yes, no, I made note of that and have it marked down here on the document. So
okay, good. Fine. All right, then going back, the next person that had raised their hand, does anybody else want to speak on this? Councillor Carr?
Yes, thank you. Through you to the CEO. And yeah, this process has kind of tripped along as we've dealt with the pandemic. The report says next council should consider a more detailed review of the plan and approach to establishing city priorities. So I guess my question is, it says also that copies will be prepared for distribution. What are we looking at in terms of how many copies and what cost, possibly, considering that it could very well be reviewed in more detail next term by that council?
Through his worship to Councillor Carr, we're at the stage now, there were a number of copies of the original printed, and they have pretty much all been have been delivered, handed out, and taken up over the years. So we really don't have any left in terms of any formal copies. So obviously we want to, subject to council's approval, get it the updated version on the city website, which I think is the first priority. We wouldn't certainly be looking at printing significant numbers that would last us for 10 or 15 years like the original version was. So I don't expect it would be much in the way of cost to prepare those, some hard copies that individuals may want, rather than reviewing on the website.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else on this item? All right, another big step for this council in terms of, you consider all the official plan, master plan, strategic plan. Now, this is another big step. And so, I think we're all grateful to CEO Bove for continuing with this process, because it would have been easy just to have left it behind. It was important. We've updated it. We've all had good input and we feel comfortable with it. And so thank you, Mr. Bove, to you and all the staff that have brought this forward. So I'll call the question. So with the amendment being the addition of Councillor Millet's suggestion, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you and congratulations again. So we'll now move to consent items, where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. So I will go around the table, keeping in mind my seating chart in my head, starting with Councillor McCaw.
8B1, please.
Okay, Councillor Sanderson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop. You're on mute, sorry.
8B6.
8B6. Councillor Carr.
8B1 and 8B6, please.
Councillor Feeney. I think you said no, thank you. If I can read lips. Yeah.
They've been pulled, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Millet.
Ditto, already been called. Thank you.
And Councillor Kelly.
No, thank you.
Okay. So then the resolution is that the following agenda items be approved with the exceptions of 8B1 and 8B6. Looking for a mover and a seconder, Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor McCaw. All in favor? It's carried. 8B1, licensing and regulation, short-term accommodations. It is the Director of Corporate Services, Clerk's Report number DCS 2022-05. And the resolution is that pursuant to the Director of Corporate Services Report number DCS 2022-05, a bylaw be prepared for Council's consideration to license and regulate short-term accommodations, and that a bylaw to amend the fees and charges bylaw number 2021-195 to add the applicable fees be prepared for Council's consideration. It's moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Alsop. Councillor McCaw, you were the first one to raise this. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And I just wanted to commend the Director of Corporate Services. Really nice to finally see this come forward. I know there's going to be a lot of happy people throughout our community to see this happen as well. So I'm fully in support of this, and I look forward to the bylaw coming forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. McDonald. I notice on page 2 of the report, staff is aware of and anticipates the bylaw and included provisions will require regular review, potential amendments. I'm worried about the overall impact on enforcement. Are we anticipating the impact on our existing staff workload, including this in that? It seems to me it looks to be a pretty big file once we open it. Your thoughts on that, Mr. McDonald?
Through the chair to Councillor Millette, certainly we as a large group met corporate services, economic development, building bylaw. Director Ashton's group and Brett Forrestal's group, they have a dual role to play with building code and bylaw enforcement, and representatives from fire prevention. Met last year and had a really good debate about all things enforcement related to short-term accommodations. You know, good and bad that we're not one of the first municipalities to go down this path. There's lots of municipalities that have been involved in this kind of regulation and licensing for quite some time. So we're able to learn some lessons from them. Some of them have learned a lot of hard lessons, and part of the reason for the statement that you're referring to, Councillor Millette, is some of them have repealed portions of their bylaw and or rescinded them pending legal appeals. Some of them are refining their bylaw to more accurately address local conditions. I think that's what I was referring to, is that we certainly want to have something on the books so that we can get a little bit of a handle on what's happening in the local market. But certainly, yes, it was loud and clear to me that between the licensing officer and corporate services, who will be kind of the face that starts the process of getting people licensed, identifying the regulations for them and starting them down the path, to bylaw enforcement and fire prevention, building inspection folks that do all of those things. There was widespread recognition among the group at the meetings that they're at their limit right now as far as enforcement. Certainly some of those folks have had COVID-related job duties have been added, and so we're anticipating hopefully some lessening of duties related to COVID as time proceeds. But no, certainly I've spoken to those enforcement staff here and said the reality is until we have something in place, we can't really tell council what the increased workload is until we know what the workload is. So in some of my conversations with staff, you know, semi-local in Prince Edward County, and then some far-flung folks that have been doing this for quite some time, they don't really know what the impact is until they get into the regulation of it, because Some of our neighbors thought they knew kind of what the scope of the issue was. Almost universally, they have had their eyes open that they were wildly underestimating it. So we can't, with any confidence, tell this group of council members what the workload will be until we're involved in licensing and regulating. So there is a statement in the report with confidence telling you that we'll be amending this bylaw from time to time, looking at what it looks like and what it needs to do to our local community to effectively address some of our local situations, but also we'll be back to you identifying, if need be, resource allocation, and so that we can accurately address what needs to be addressed based on council's wishes.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Mr. McDonald. And I'm reading between the lines. I'm guessing that sooner than later, and I would hope it's before staff find themselves in the weeds and really overwhelmed, that we do hear that we do have to allocate more staff. And I think going into this, we should all be wide-eyed on this and know that this will in fact be a bit of a load on our enforcement and the existing staff, because the sheer volume, I guess, of the work aside from enforcement would probably lead one to believe that, again, as I said earlier, this could be a fairly big file. So thanks very much, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Councillor Millett. And I wonder if I can piggyback on your line of questions. And certainly I would suggest that the enforcement regarding housing and not just short-term accommodations, but also some of the rental housing, student housing, number of people residing at a property has increased this term significantly from previously. And then we also had a large number of complaints generated because of COVID and just the time. So your points are well made. But Mr. McDonald, I wonder if I can ask you, looking at the piece here, so we're bringing in a short-term accommodation bylaw. Properties who operate as short-term accommodators, so the Airbnbs of the world, will be required to register, pay the fee, and then submit their information. I think what's missing in this is the compliance piece. And what I mean by that is, what happens if someone chooses not to register? We've all received many complaints regarding property owners who have not considered the impact on the neighbors by having these short-term accommodations and the disruption that comes from it and all of that. And I think if we're going to introduce a bylaw requiring that people register their short-term accommodation, I think we should have something that says what happens if they don't. So for example, under the current bylaw, if someone went to a property and determined that it was operating as a short-term accommodation and they had not registered as the city, the bylaw officer can issue an order. They can't issue something which then could go to court and require that person to register and then be governed by the rules that we have now or in the future. So I wonder if you want to, can you address that in terms of what you would recommend so that we would have something to allow this bylaw to have some teeth and to be enforceable or to have insurance compliance?
And to the chair and to all of council. So yes, certainly we're looking at what other jurisdictions are doing to encourage compliance. And by encourage, I mean have available to them enforcement tools on the front end. So that is one of the big changes that some of the early adopters are looking at or have instituted recently is penalties for knowing of rather than reporting of infractions. So some municipalities use the model or had adopted the model of waiting for reporting of infractions before reaching out and imposing penalties under the bylaw. And now a lot of them are changing to a becoming aware or knowing of infractions, and being proactive and going out and enforcing and imposing the penalties that are available. So we're looking at what has been adopted in other jurisdictions then has been effectively or successfully defended upon challenge. I think I need to be really upfront and clear with council. Some of the registered companies or corporations that are in the business of short-term accommodations, some of the ones, the names that you would all be familiar with, are actively litigating against municipalities around North America, and not just large municipalities. They don't distinguish large or small. They're protecting their corporate assets, which are these vacation rentals or short-term accommodations. So we're looking at it from that perspective as to what's been implemented and what's been defended and been successful. So I think we certainly are interested in that, and I think when the bylaw comes to council in March for your consideration for approval, 3 readings, there will be something to that effect. So it was purposely brought before you today in draft form to be prepared in anticipation that there might be some requests for additions or amendments to it. But I think, yes, we'll have something of that effect to strongly encourage with threat of penalty for not registering and being compliant with the bylaw the bylaw that we're asking to approve in March.
Okay, so from my understanding, then what you said, we will have, the bylaw will include a compliance piece, and we'll be able to discuss it then. Okay, thank you. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. And that was one of my questions too, was on the compliance. Just generally speaking though, last term we did, council did approve a rather global policy on proactive bylaw enforcement, because previously it was just reactive or complaint driven. But we obviously expect our bylaw enforcement staff, if they see a violation or know of a violation, that they take it upon their own fruition to enforce the bylaws. I guess what I would say as this gets developed a little further and comes back to us in March is that, you know, because again, the comments about the drain on resources that it may contribute. We have to keep in mind that if there's an increase in bylaw enforcement time and resources as it relates to this, then it's the short-term accommodations that are causing the drive-in increase in staff resources should be paying that bill. It's that simple. And so we need to make sure that we're setting application fees that appropriately cover the work that's going to be involved in processing and monitoring, and then enforcement. And then the fines also need to be set in such a way that they're reasonable and proportionate, but they also provide a necessary deterrent as well. And sometimes I know in bylaws in the past, our fines related to certain things have been quite nominal, and people say, you know what, I'll take a calculated risk, and you know, if I get a fine for $100, well, that's the cost of doing business. And you know, that is a slippery slope. So I think we need to make sure that both the application fee and the fines are actually set at proportionate amounts that actually cover the costs and provide the necessary deterrence. And you know, recognizing the fact that this is big business, but it's accommodation business that has leaked considerably into the housing market. And when we know that 25% of housing stock in Ontario is investment income properties, and that's not all short-term accommodations, but it's not lost on me that investors are taking their money and stretching it through, you know, year over year increases in real estate and investing in this type of business simply because it's lucrative. And just hearing some of the anecdotal comments about what people will rent and where they will rent is quite phenomenal in terms of prices. And so it's not lost on me that we have to do something to put this back in the barn, if you will, to a certain degree. So I would just add those comments that we want to make sure that we've got appropriate coverage in terms of ensuring that the licensing fees is covering the work. We don't need to be, you know, hand-wringing over how we're going to operate this. And if we have to contract out for more bylaw enforcement, or we have to hire, at least we have a revenue source in which to do it, versus going back to existing taxpayers who have asked us to take on this particular bylaw to trim this type of activity to make it more reasonable, it's not fair for them to pay for it. So I think we're on the right track, and it's good to see that this bylaw is out. And certainly I do recognize that we're going to have amendments, and I think there's some good ones here as well that we may have to consider down the road. And certainly councils of the future will have to do that, but at least we're getting into to putting some framework around that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. So when this came to council on November the 8th, council made a decision to increase the recommended new application and renewal fees. Currently, what council supported in November 8th was $1,000 for a new application and $300 a year for the renewal to be an STA. Do you have a suggestion of what, is that okay? Or do you have a suggestion of what you would like to see those initial application and renewal fees at?
Are you, sorry, are you asking?
Asking you, Councillor Carr, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, I'm going to leave it back to staff to say, you know, how much resources is going to be necessary and what would be the dollar figure attached to it. I'm not in the operation side of the world. We're in the policy world here. But I put it this way, I would say to staff, don't shortchange yourself and make it a struggle, because then it comes back to, we've got this high tax on the resources, if you will, but we don't have the funds to necessarily go out and hire more bylaw enforcement. So we want to make sure the service pays for itself. So I'll leave it with staff.
Okay, and I think just on that, I think we have a decent application and renewal fee based on the recommendation they had made to us November the 8th. The issue of the penalties or the compliance, and we know that a small portion of individuals in society at all different different activities make up most of the work for enforcement of right across the board. So keeping in mind that there are going to be what we call these frequent flyers, where bylaw enforcement will be dealing with certain properties over and over again, and we certainly hear that from the complaints from the neighbors who are dealing with it. So that compliance piece or the penalty fees, I agree with you, Councillor Carr. It should be reflective of the costs of the city to deal with that, because it's not fair to taxpayers and the good short-term accommodators who are registering and following the rules, that they're subsidizing enforcement with those people that aren't. So good points, and that will be included in the bylaw when it comes back next month. Okay, other discussion on this. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks for the report. And just a quick question for Director McDonald. I think the numbers being bounced around are maybe close to 300 short-term accommodations right now in the city. And once we get this bylaw, we'll have a better idea. And I just wanted to also mention that they also have to commit to the 4% met tax. Is that fair?
Through the chair to Councillor Kelly, that's correct. So they would be subject to that, the MAT tax as well.
All right, thank you. Just want to put that on the record. Thanks.
Yeah, well, and further on that, Councillor Kelly, they are subject to the MAT tax now, regardless of this bylaw. They, the municipal accommodation tax is for any lodging operation, whether it be hotels or motels or bed and breakfast or short-term accommodators. They're all subject to it now. And but the piece that we're missing is they don't have to register, and so we've done that. So good reminder.
Just for you, Mayor, I'm speaking from the Bay Quinte tourism. This comes up in our meetings, is that not everybody is registered, and the ones that are not registered are not always honoring the MAT tax. So if everything's legit and there's paperwork, then we know who has to submit that 4%, and it's we're all on the same page. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? So I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried, and we'll look forward to seeing that at one of our March meetings. 8B6, recommendation report for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw 3014 as amended, 8092 Highway 62, former Township of Thurlow. It's now the city of Belleville. It is the principal planners report number PP 2022-10. And it comes from the February 7th, 2022 Planning Advisory Committee meeting. The resolution is that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council, that application B 77-1155 to amend the City of Belleville zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended for 8092 Highway 62, City of Belleville, be approved as follows. That zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended be amended by removing the holding symbol and amending the general commercial C3-17 zone to include additional special provisions that will require the use of a water holding tank as the sole water source for any development, and that a bylaw amending zoning bylaw number 3014 being a bylaw to regulate the use of land and the height, bulk, location, size, floor area, spacing, character, and use of buildings be prepared for council's consideration. This was pulled by Councillor Alsop. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Carr. Councillor Alsop, you can lead us off on this, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight this as a great balance between commercial needs and existing residential needs that came about through some creative planning. So this is someone who's looking to establish a gas bar with a restaurant on a piece of land where that's definitely in need, but the residents were concerned about the level of well water and water that would be available to them if this new development required to use the existing groundwater in that area. So we've created a provision to put a holding tank on the property, which will then service all the water needs for the property in question, allowing the neighbors to be ensured that their water levels will go unchanged rather, and that this development will be able to proceed. So I think it's a great development and a great use of planning.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on this? Councillor Carr, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And Councillor Alsop captured that precisely. I just also wanted to say too, because this application has been through planning previously, and I've just heard some general public comments. Why is there a gas station there? Why is there an eating establishment there? This piece of property has always been zoned as general commercial and allowed for a number of uses, including a gas bar. But what it didn't include was an eating establishment. And so the first special provision was just that, was to add an eating establishment or a restaurant to that particular piece of property for zoning. And then we got into the concern over well water in the area and making sure that existing properties were well protected. So at the end of the day, the city doesn't necessarily direct that this investment has to occur there, but we allow through zoning certain types of establishments based on private developers and their investment dollars. And I know there was also some concern raised amongst the public regarding traffic, and because that is on Highway 62, that's responsibility of the Ministry of Transportation for Ontario, and they have certainly provided comments and as it pertains to the traffic in and out of that area. So it's been well reviewed, and I think we've got to strike a good balance here and hope to see actual investment in construction soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this? I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. So we'll now move to 8C, council information matters, where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. So we'll go the other way around the table, starting with Councillor Kelly. Anything you'd like to pull?
No, thank you.
Councillor Millette?
No, thank you.
Councillor Feeney?
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr?
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop?
No, thank you.
Councillor Sanderson?
No, thank you.
And Councillor McCaw?
No, thank you.
Did I ask you, Councillor Millette? I did. Okay. Thank you. It's hard to do this without everybody being here in the council chambers. So so there are no items. So I'm looking for a motion that the agenda items be received. Moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. A motion to rise and report. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. We'll now move to bylaws, and there are a number of them. And if I can just read the numbers, please. So we'll do first reading of bylaws number 2022-11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And I'll point out that 20 is for first reading only today. Motion for that, please. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. Second reading of bylaws number 2022-11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Motion for that, please. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Feeney. Thank you. Any questions or any discussion on these items? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And third and final reading of bylaws 2022-11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. All right, we'll now move to new business. And I would like to take a moment to thank all of the residents of Belleville for adhering to the regulations that have been put in place by the Government of Ontario dealing with COVID-19. I am so proud of our city and our region for being proactive and taking all the proper protocols seriously. Our rates of COVID-19 from the beginning have been among the best in Ontario, and I'm grateful for everyone's cooperation. This Thursday, February the 17th, Ontario will be relaxing some of the restrictions imposed by the provincial government. Indoor dining, theaters, gyms, recreational facilities, and other services will resume with 100% capacity. And these relaxations will affect municipal services as well. On March the 1st, we will also remove restrictions for access to municipal buildings, which require proof of vaccination. There will be a continued requirement for masks to be worn indoors until the provincial government makes an announcement on the matter in the future. So a few reminders to keep in mind over the coming days. City Hall remains open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. by appointment only. If you require in-person services, please don't forget to book your appointment. The Quinte Sports and Wellness Center, which is already reopened as of January 31st for all services and programs, they will be updating their modifications or the rules for entrance and participation, and that will continue to be posted on their website at qswc.com. And I would point out that starting on Thursday this week, the Belleville Senators can increase their capacity from 500 spectators to 50% with these provincial announcements. And then we believe that after March 1st, they'll be at 100%, but further clarification will come as that announcement was only made just this morning. The Hastings and Prince Edward Public Health Vaccine Clinic that operates at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center is now operating in the gymnasium on a part-time basis. This has allowed us to reopen the Family Dental Center arena for ice bookings again and to allow the gym to be available for regular programming several days per week. The Emergency Warming Center has been activated several times this winter. A reminder that it is operating at Bridge Street United Church and is open from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. The threshold for activation of the Emergency Warming Center is -10 degrees Celsius. And I would like to remind residents that all winter trails and parks are open, and we encourage you to take advantage of getting outside for some physical and mental exercise, including walks, hiking, etc. Skating at Victoria Harbor and West Zwick's Park, as well as the community rink at the Fairgrounds property and on the east end of the city are being enjoyed by many. And we appreciate the work that staff and volunteers do to keep these facilities operating as weather conditions allow. Thank you so much to everybody who's been involved. More information is available on the City of Belleville website, and we use our local and social media outlets to also notify the public. After almost 2 long years of COVID-19, we are looking forward to the increased normalization of our lives. And as I have said many times, as a council, we remain collectively and singularly focused on the safety and health of our residents in all of our decisions. And we encourage all eligible individuals to get vaccinated as soon as possible. My colleagues, before I open it up for other new business, I did notify you by email over the weekend of 3 items that I wanted to bring forward to today's meeting. And they were new since the agenda came out. So first of all, I would like to share the very good news that we received with respect to the Statistics Canada 2021 Census of Population And the fact that the city of Belleville has led Eastern Ontario in growth at a rate of almost 8.6% over the past 5 years, substantial portions of that growth really in the last 3 years. We are now over 55,000 people, and that is good because it ensures that the future of our community will remain affordable and that people want to come here, and that we're all very, very proud of the quality of life we have here. But that also means that the signs on the 401 and entering into the city are now out of date, or they need to be adjusted. And so I am looking for a motion to request that staff update City of Belleville population figures on entrance signages, and also to request that the Ministry of Transportation update the 401 signs. Can I please get a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Feeney and Councillor Kelly. Any questions or discussion on that item? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried, thank you. And there will be a release going out from the city. And we want to thank Manager Karen Post for her help with that. The second item is we will be having a future delegation from Fire Chief Monique Bolaire regarding the 2022 edition of Camp Molly. And Camp Molly is a leadership camp designed, targeted towards young women who can consider making firefighting a career path. And that will be happening this summer in July. But we wish to promote that. And so the request came forward to me that we use some of our transit buses and have them wrapped for that. And so while we will have more information later on, and I expect that in the future, this will be a line item in the departmental budget. But as this is the first time and we're moving forward, I'm looking for a motion that $15,000 be made available from the Lexicon Reserve Fund to cover production costs on transit buses to promote the 2022 edition of Camp Molly. Moved by Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor Alsap. And the point that I would make is that it may not be a full bus wrap. They may have smaller portions or whatnot. We would let them deal with it. But I have been advised by finance staff that this is an appropriate funding source, and that will go ahead. And we will get more information in the coming months from Chief Bolaire when she comes to present to council. Any questions or comments on that? Councillor Alsop.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that it's a great program. Certainly a very exciting thing to have in the city of Belleville to help inspire young girls towards leadership, whether that's in firefighting or not. As the father of 3 little ones, I hope I have 3 future Camp Molly graduates. I think this is a great way to promote that we have this resource in the community and to inspire some young women out there. So I think this is wonderful, and I certainly support it.
Thank you. Anyone else on this? I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And then the last item deals with something a little bit unusual. Normally during the 8C phase of council meetings, we deal with resolutions from other municipalities calling on action from the provincial government. I received correspondence from a citizens group which referenced a resolution that the town of Ajax had passed. And it deals with the increased noise made by modified vehicle exhaust systems. And I circulated the motion so that you could see it over the weekend. And I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for the following motion: that the City of Belleville Council urges the province of Ontario to work with the Lieutenant Governor to expedite the proclamation of Section 75.1 of the Highway Traffic Act, Better for People, Smarter for Business Act 2019, and that the Ministry of Transportation be requested to set a maximum decibel limit for exhaust systems to ensure that exhaust systems with the capability of exceeding 80 decibels will not be available for sale and will not be permitted in the province of Ontario, and consider reviewing and increasing associated penalties for non-compliance, and that the province of Ontario be requested to provide funding for police services in Ontario to be equipped with approved decibel monitoring devices to aid in effective enforcement efforts, and that a copy of this motion be sent to the Honorable Caroline Mulroney, Minister of Transportation, the Honorable Todd Smith, Minister of Energy, MPP for the Bay of Quinte, Daryl Cramp, the Member of Provincial Parliament for the riding of Hastings, Lennox, and Addington, the Belleville Police Service Board, the Belleville Police Service, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And if we get a mover and a seconder, I can briefly speak to it. Councillor Millette moved, Councillor Feeney seconded it. So I get a lot of complaints from residents who are bothered by these aftermarket customized mufflers that are added to vehicles, which increase the noise they make from the exhaust. And it is a nuisance that is all over the city. It's disturbing people's not just peace and quiet, but it's also keeping them from sleeping. And it is in some cases frightening when motorists are revving their engines at intersections and whatnot. When you add to the fact that some of this activity is happening downtown Front Street in and amongst large high-rise buildings, it just serves to amplify that noise even more so. And these are, they're not, the cars do not start off with these types of mufflers. They are aftermarket accessories, customization that's designed to increase the noise. And the province of Ontario should not permit it, and they should help our police services be able to enforce it. We've had numerous times people have complained to us, and we don't have these enforcement tools. And it is a simple solution. Normally, as I said, we would have this resolution come to us under 8C and we would approve it, but Mr. McDonald's advised that we do it this way. The good thing about this, it'll be Belleville's resolution, it'll be circulated and other communities can add their voice to it. And particularly being a provincial election year, I think this is a time to bring this forward. So I appreciate Councillor Millette and Councillor Feeney for moving and seconding it, and I'll open it up now for discussion. Anyone else have anything they want to say? Councillor Millette, and then Councillor Feeney and Councillor Alsop.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I was happy to bring this motion on the floor. Lest anyone think we're the fuddy-duddies on council who don't recall the souped up hot rods of yesteryear, where Mudcat Lane was a drag strip and all of that. This is a different animal. The current these are all almost entirely all four-cylinder imports that somebody's watched too much of the Fast and Furious and think if they put a coffee can on their muffler or on their exhaust in place of a muffler, they think it goes faster. But these things are well and truly above the decibel level that's in the Highway Traffic Act, and we should be enforcing it. I live on I wouldn't call it a busy street, but busy enough that it's a bit of a drag strip between stop signs, and it's a constant issue. Anyone who's a shift worker or who's trying to get a baby to sleep, these things are an annoyance beyond a level that should be acceptable. So I'll support this. And again, listen, I grew up in the era of muscle cars. My dad worked for Chrysler. We had Barracudas and Challengers and Chargers at home, but they were throaty, kind of a muscle. This is a whine that is beyond an acceptable decibel level, and it's for no good reason. It doesn't enhance performance in any way, shape, or form for these vehicles, except I don't know, make noise. So I'm happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Millette. Councillor Feeney.
I'm on the same page. Absolutely. Many of the complaints that I'm getting from people are the fact that, there's this noise. One gentleman contacted me. His wife was very ill, and the car next door was just revved up at 6 o'clock in the morning. She couldn't sleep. My mom lives on Sydney Street, and it is just crazy with the noise going by. So I think this is a good thing for us to do, and I certainly support it.
Thank you. Councillor Alsop.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to confirm that standard exhaust systems do not reach over 80 decibels. I would hate for someone to be in a position where they've worked their whole life and finally went down to their Chevy dealer or whoever and bought their C8 Corvette, and now they have to spend some money to quiet it down. But provided that it only affects aftermarket mufflers, I don't see any downside to this, and certainly I can relate with the Fast and the Furious comments, and I know where that comes from. So there you go.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. All right, new business. Anyone else have any new business they'd like to raise today? I'll start with Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. I got two items. Number one, the Ontario government published the Housing Affordability Tax or Task Force report, and there's a number of recommendations in there, and some would appear to be favorable to municipalities, and others would could possibly be viewed as provincial overreach into local planning decisions. I'm still analyzing the report, and as chair of the planning committee, and I've also just had some brief exchanges with the director of engineering development services. We're going to talk more, and then I may bring something forward asking for a staff report, and just making sure that we're providing some feedback on this. Like I said, there's some really good initiatives in here, but there are some that would be concerning. I know that our municipalities does quite well in terms of approval process and timing. We're investing more in staff, as we earlier talked about city view investment and staff going along with that, which is all to expedite planning applications, and particularly in the housing sector, to get moving on the supply side. So anyway, I would encourage my colleagues, if you haven't already, to take a read of that report. And I think it's something that we'll certainly have to discuss later. The second thing is I'm looking for requesting a staff report, and I'll provide the writing to Director McDonald for inclusion in the 2022 operating budget agenda for council's consideration and information. Just a history and analysis of farmland assessment in the past 8 years, as well as historical tax rates and possible options to mitigate significant tax impacts. After we set the budget, we will have a meeting in which we'll have to provide and make decisions on tax rates. And just hearing from some in the agricultural community, they're concerned about farmland assessments. And I recognize that the assessment portion is out of our hand. We remit a bill to MPAC remit money to MPAC on a bill every year, of which they provide these assessments. But I think some analysis from our finance department would be certainly helpful in the event that we have to advocate further up the line. It just concerns me that farmland, when you talk about the agricultural sector and the provision of food and things we require to live our daily lives, I just want to make sure that we've had a look at that. So that request there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll look forward to getting that to Director McDonald in writing. Anyone else for new business today? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Two items I'd like to bring forward. The first is the social service relief funding. Now, the reason I bring it up here is that at last week's meeting of the Community and Hastings County Community and Human Services Committee, there were 2 envelopes of money totaling in excess of $500,000 that is currently available through the SSRF4 fund that had originally been earmarked for somewhere else, but now, or at least had been earmarked to give to Grace Inn to cover the operating shortfall in their 2022 budget. So I raised the point that we need to look at all eligible organizations across the region. And it was agreed that we would convene a meeting this Wednesday to determine, how to allocate those funds to as many eligible organizations as we can. And so not to jump ahead to that meeting, I did want to make council aware of this, given our contribution of $50,000, and there's also $114,000 that was agreed to between Hastings County and Grace Inn, which was supposed to cover 1/3 of their annual operating budget. So something's dramatically changed if Grace Inn is $500,000 short for 2022. So the reason I bring it up here is that, you know, we've got 4 members of council that are on that committee. And if any of the members have any questions or input, you know, reach out to us before Wednesday's meeting. So that's the first item.
Okay, so Councillor Sanderson, before you go on to it, you know, I was trying to listen intently to how that would be a new business item for a Belleville City Council meeting, particularly when we have a shared service agreement with Hastings County. And, you know, so I'll allow it, but I'm just going to put everybody on notice that, you know, we appoint members to represent the city of Belleville on a number of outside agencies, including Hastings County. You know, I'm not sure this is the right place for us to have those conversations, but I will, I just point that out. I hope everybody understands where I'm coming from, because we have enough of our own business to be dealing with at each and every meeting, much less dealing with those other items. But okay, I've said enough. You had another item you said, Councillor Sanderson?
Yes, well, thank you for your guidance on that. I just, the reason I brought it forward is that we have discussed those types of items in chamber before. So the second item is Urban Ward 2 public transit funding. So I have some very good news for Ward 2 residents on public transit. But before I get to that, I want to refresh my colleagues and residents on the plan for expansion of public transit into Urban Ward 2. So transit Route 9 was tailored to the urbanized areas within Ward 2, and the transit route is fixed for 1 year, during which time transit operations staff are gathering data on usage throughout the entire route and determine the most optimal service route, as well as bus stop locations, and whether the service should continue and in what format. So we will review that data after 1 full year of operation and modify public transit accordingly. So as part of the input to that plan, we conducted a survey in 2019 and reviewed the results to develop Transit Route 9. And while the entire Ward 2 was canvassed, public transit was only established in the urban area. So the 2019 survey, 3 years ago, did indicate that about 70% were against property tax increases to fund public transit. But when you look at the survey and you remove the 1,350 rural residents, so those would be the residents in Corbyville, you know, Foxborough, Zion Hill, Phillipston, the actual split in terms of property taxes dropped to about 50-50. So yes, you know, we listened to all of the residents in Ward 2 and we tailored the route to the urban area. So with the introduction of Ward 2 expansion came mobility service for all residents and allowed previously restricted Ward 1 residents to use this service to travel to Ward 2 for medical appointments. And we also provided the on-demand service to allow Ward 2 residents the same coverage and benefit as currently received by Ward 1 residents. So as chair of both the Transit Operation Advisory Committee and the Finance Committee, and prior to the expansion of public transit into Ward 2, I had been in discussion with our finance team to explore opportunities and options on how we might fund expansion beyond September of this year. with a view to make a recommendation and bring it forward through the budget process regarding the funding for Ward 2 public transit. So more recently, working with the finance group, 4 possible options were considered, and a recommendation will come forward to council in the draft 2022 operating budget at the end of March. So we looked at the Ward 1 funding model. We considered the Ward 1 funding model phased in over multiple years. We considered area rating and funding other than property tax. So the recommendation that will come forward through the process for consideration and approval will be to utilize available funds through the Safe Restart Agreement from October through December of 2022, as well as from January to March of 2023. So utilization of these funds in the manner we are prescribing has been confirmed with the government representatives. So no property tax impact on urban Ward 2 residents, no knee-jerk shift in service. We stay the course and allow the Ward 2 public transit to unfold in a thoughtful and purposeful manner. So I want to take this opportunity to recognize and thank our finance management team, Director Carol Hines and Manager Brandon Ferguson, for working with me on this. And I also want to thank the public members of the Transit Operations Advisory Committee, Mr. Dwayne Hiltz, Ms. Veronica Leonard, Ms. Caitlin St. John, Mr. Michael Harris, and Mr. Fred Pollitt of Loyalist College for their commitment to the improvement of public transit for all residents. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Sanderson. So let me get this so I straight. So we've funded the Route 9 for a year, and that year will expire in September of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And so we would have had to make a decision. We have to make a decision at the end of next month in terms of the operating budget for after September 2022. So you're stating that in the Safe Restart Agreement, we have funding available for us for transit that would allow us to run from October through to the end of this fiscal year and for the first quarter of the next year, which would get us through the next budget cycle.
That's correct.
Okay, and were you able to confirm that the Safe Restart Agreement has transit funding for these types of services?
Yes, the finance team reached out to their provincial counterparts federal counterparts and confirmed that this usage is permitted.
Okay, and I see Director Hines is on there. Do you have something you want to add, or were you just available for questions?
I just wanted to add that it's actually a combination of provincial gas tax and the Safe Restart money. So we had Safe Restart money for transit specifically. There was a stream just dedicated to transit. We had sufficient funding to fund the first portion, and then the balance is coming from provincial gas tax. So I think we were hoping, I think we originally planned to use provincial gas tax to run to September, but we were actually able to use Safe Restart funding. So it's actually a combination of Safe Restart funding and provincial gas tax that gets us through until March of 2023.
Well, that's spectacular news. Very, very good. Thank you. Can I just ask one more question, Councillor Sanderson? So part of what we had committed to was, a rather large route for Route 9. I think if I remember correctly, it was longer than most traditional routes because we were trying to hit all the population centers. Will this funding allow us to modify that route after September the 1st to shorten the length of that route, as well as to reflect what we've gotten in terms of data for ridership, that some areas may not be supporting it as much as other areas?
Yeah, that's correct, Your Worship. The plan would be to, at the end of September, analyze the data. Currently, we run on a 45-minute route. We know that we're running through areas where there's zero or very little ridership. So we would probably, all things being equal, look to try and shorten that to a half-hour route and just target it at the areas where we've got the most ridership.
Okay, well, that's terrific. Thank you very much for that. And, and we also know that on March 11th, with the return to in-class at Loyalist College, we're going to be expecting to see our transit numbers go up again. But that's very, very good. Thank you very much to all the members of the committee and city staff for bringing that forward. Okay, new business. Anyone else for new business? Councillor Carr.
Yes, just to follow up on that discussion, and we'll see if I have to do a point of order. I'm hoping not to. This is all news to myself, and I'm assuming that it's also news to the other member of the Transit Advisory Committee. I know we didn't have a meeting last week or last couple of weeks because of quorum issues. Both we were there, Councillor Millette and myself, and we do have a meeting coming up. So I'm in the dark is the simple way to put this as a member of the Transit Advisory Committee. This is all news to me. I know that there was reference to the public members, and I don't know if there's been discussions that have been had with them privately, but this certainly is still good news. But nonetheless, I'm a little perplexed procedurally as to why the committee was basically left in the dark, and we're finding about this now. And then keeping in mind too is that we're also going to be debating and looking at this issue at budget time, as was pointed out. So I'm a little curious as to why the Transit Advisory Committee hadn't reviewed this with the thought that it would then come through the budget process at council.
So
I don't know. No, sorry. Let me.
I'd like to respond to that.
Just a second, Councillor Sanderson. So what I would suggest, I think this is news to all of us in terms of it, and it's good news. It is very, very good news. And I heard Councillor Sanderson say it's going to be coming as a recommendation to the budget meeting at the end of March. And then certainly we can discuss it then. I think that if you and any other councillors have any questions or want to have dialogue with Councillor Sanderson, you should do it offline, either at the committee level or individually amongst yourselves. Again, it's some good news, and we still have to act on it in the future, but I'd rather have it dealt with that way than here under new business. Does anyone else have anything for new business? Councillor Sanderson, I'm not going to allow you to respond, because if you do, then someone else gets to respond and we go around and around. I really think that this is best to be dealt with amongst the members offline.
I heard you, Your Worship, but I want to respond because it's been discussed in council. I brought it up in council in December.
So Councillor, order. The item of new business, we're now moving on. If you would like to have a discussion with Councillor Carr about that, I encourage the two of you to have that dialogue. You've shared some very good news with us, and we look forward to the recommendation coming forward. And you and Councillor Carr can discuss how it will proceed at some point in the future. Sorry to cut you off, but I think that's the best way, the best use of our time.
So how can I challenge your ruling, or can I?
Certainly you can challenge the ruling. You can make a motion that the ruling of the chair be, well, first of all, there has not been any point of order, and you've dealt with your item under new business.
I thought Councillor Carr raised a point of order, or said he thought he had a point of order, just like the 2 points of order we had in December that weren't points of order.
Yeah. I think he was musing about potentially bringing forth one, then he chose not to. So I do not have a point of order on the floor at this time. We're dealing with new business. I'm asking if anyone else has any additional points of new business they wish to raise at this time. Seeing none, we will move on. The next item on our agenda, there are no motions today, so notice of motions. Does anyone have any notice of motions? Seeing none, we'll move to announcements, and I'll open the floor now for anybody who has any announcements they'd like to make. I see Councillor Carr. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you. So 2 announcements. I'm pleased to announce that the 2022 Arts and Culture Funding Application process opens today, February 14th, 2022, with an application deadline of March 18, 2022. And also pleased to announce that the 2022 Social Infrastructure Funding Application process will open on March 28th, 2022, with an application deadline of April 22nd, 2022. And I want to thank grant committee members for helping establish those deadlines. Further details and applications are available on the city's website or by contacting the finance department. And we look forward to those applications. Secondly, I'd hope Ward 2 residents can join me as I host a couple of town hall meetings to provide an update on city business, including the 2022 draft operating budget, and dialogue with residents about issues important to them. Tuesday, March 22nd at 6:30 p.m. will be a live and interactive virtual town hall, which requires pre-registering by emailing me at councillor.carr@belleville.ca. And second meeting will be Thursday, March 24th at 6:30 p.m. and it will be an in-person town hall at the Thurlow Community Center at 516 Harmony Road. Thank you.
All right, new business, Councillor Kelly.
I'm under
I'm
announcements.
sorry, I'm my mistake. I apologize, sir. Announcements, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. This is just a comment tonight, kind of a surveillance of the city that I've been witnessing the last couple of weeks. And I want to go back to last August. I met with Mayor Panchuk, Councillor Thompson. We had Quinny Immigration Cat Fisher with us and Kyle Hawkins Schultz from the city of Belleville. And we launched into a campaign, Hate Has No Home Here, signs throughout the city of Belleville. So it was the Hate Has No Home here in our city. And we were one of the few cities in the province to actually get behind this campaign. So we had the signs all over. We worked with Belleville Police Service and the Chamber of Commerce. And I think many in Belleville might remember those signs. Again, this is just my surveillance in the last couple of weeks. I've noticed numerous hate signs popping up in Belleville, and it has to do with the Freedom Convoy that's happening in Ottawa, and we're seeing it across the country in different municipalities. And as the chair of the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee, I've been taken back by some of the signs in the city on people's lawns. And I've done some research on this. I know Edmonton's looking into, as of late last November, December, hate signs on lawns and public spaces in Edmonton. But the challenge is, where I witnessed the sign even this afternoon, there are 2 schools in that area. And when I see the hate on the sign, it's all political driven. And I respect our freedoms in this country, but sometimes I think we may cross the line when you have young kids, adults reading this sign every day with the foul language on it. I'm always been a believer and was raised to take the high road and also respect people's rights. But to me, this is me speaking, those hate signs have no place in Belleville. They're vulgar. Young people are reading it as they walk to school. They see it on the front lawns. And hopefully, and I'm going to be checking up on other municipalities to see what we can do. And I'll be checking just with bylaw here in Belleville. I'd hate to see it come to that. But I don't believe those signs in someone's front lawn. Their neighbors may not believe in the same thing, or the movement, if that's what we're going to call it. To me, it's politically driven, but they're hateful. And that's not my Belleville. I'll leave it at that.
You know, Councillor Kelly, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think it reflects a general decline in decency
Yes.
in our society. You know, you know, we will agree to disagree on numerous things, but I don't question the motives of people that share a different opinion on me. And matter of fact, in the history of humankind, we never had any advancements when everybody agreed on things. It was only because someone had a different point of opinion. But what we've seen, these signs that, as you said, are either on flags that are being driven around our community, on T-shirts. I was just so offended to see some children sporting T-shirts with vulgarity on it as they are attending some of these protests. When did we become that type of a country? And I think that I understand that tempers are high and we're all tired of COVID and whatnot. But my goodness, we do need to take a break and go back. And I'd be very interested in working with you and anyone else where we can find a way to ensure that some of these vulgar signs are not permitted in our community. It's one thing to say, I don't like the Prime Minister. I don't agree with the Prime Minister. But what people are saying about the Prime Minister now with these flags is beyond the pale. It's completely wrong. So let's keep an eye on what that resolution is in the city of Belleville. I also note, and again, I don't mean to go off topic, but I also note that we've seen these protesters go to hospitals and long-term care where there are people that have immune deficiency issues who are designed to intimidate and to scare them, and that's also not part of our society. And they are invading the private homes of people who are elected to public life, and that also is not something that we do. And I would note that in the last federal election, there were instances of where gravel and rocks were being thrown at political leaders. I think there's a real problem when you don't want to listen to someone else's opinion so much so that you resort to these tactics. I think we all would like to work with you. Let's keep an eye on that Edmonton bylaw or what type of action it is. And we'll see if any Ontario ones come forward. Thank you for raising that. Announcements. Anyone else for announcements? All right. Well, I have a few to make. I'm going to start off with some proclamations. I'd like to proclaim today, February the 14th, as the first day of Nonprofit Appreciation Week for the first time ever. This is, as I said, the first time Nonprofit Appreciation Week, and we celebrate Ontario's 58,000 separate nonprofit organizations and their dedicated workers. Since the pandemic has started, nonprofit workers have been there when Ontario needed them the most. Let's celebrate this diverse sector and thank them during their own special Nonprofit Appreciation Week. I would also like to proclaim February 22nd as World Thinking Day in the city of Belleville. This day unites Girl Guides from across the world and is an opportunity to speak out on issues that affect young women and girls. The Belleville sign and the Bridge Street Bridge will be lit up in blue to support this day. The city of Belleville recognizes the month of March as Endometriosis Awareness Month. Proclaiming the month of March as Endometriosis Awareness Month provides an opportunity to educate the public about this common yet misunderstood disease. The Belleville sign and the Bridge Street Bridge will be lit up in yellow to support this month for several days during the month of March. I would also like to proclaim that the city of Belleville declares the week of March the 7th to the 13th, 2022, to be the 26th Annual Violence Awareness and Random Acts of Kindness Week. The citizens of Belleville are encouraged to continue to support and embrace the ideology and practice random acts of kindness, not only during the special week, but throughout the year. The Belleville sign and the Bridge Street Bridge will be lit up in blue to support this week. As we honor the life of a young Belleville man whose life was taken far too early, let us remember his spirit all year long, especially during the week of March 7th to the 13th. February 1st marked the first day of Black History Month, and this year's theme, February and Forever, celebrating Black history today and every day, focuses on recognizing the daily contributions that Black Canadians make to Canada. I would like to encourage residents to participate online events, take time for education and engage in conversation this month in particular as we celebrate the important impact that Black Canadians have had and continue to have here in Belleville, in our region, and across the globe. On January 25th, I had the pleasure of attending Harvest Hastings' virtual annual general meeting. Harvest Hastings promotes sustainable agriculture and forestry, our creative rural communities, and local food, wood, and other products produced from the land in Hastings County. I was pleased to join several members of council and city employees as we raised the Bell Let's Talk flag at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center in support of Bell Let's Talk Day on January the 26th. Access to mental health support is vital for every member of our community, and it's imperative that we all support this important cause. On January the 27th, I was also able to visit the new Stan Clemencic Care Center facility to present a check for $225,000 to Hospice Quinte Executive Director Jennifer May Anderson. Hospice Quinte changes the lives of the terminally ill, their families, and the bereaved for the better by providing individuals, their families, and caregivers with compassionate end-of-life care, and by attending to those physical, psychosocial, and practical needs. We offer emphatic care or empathetic care to those who are grieving. On January the 28th, I was fortunate to present Rob Christ from the Grace Inn Shelter with a check for $50,000 on behalf of the City of Belleville. Grace Inn is a 21-bed emergency shelter for adults aged 18 years of age and older. They provide overnight shelter for those in need and breakfast for those at the shelter each morning. To date, the City of Belleville, this term, we have contributed a total of $198,000 to this organization, and we're grateful for their service in our community. I also had the pleasure of being part of the drive-by celebration for local Hastings Manor resident Cecilia Tomaso on January 31st to celebrate her 100th birthday. And what a wonderful day it was, and I want to thank Duncan Armstrong for playing the lead in bringing that event together. On February the 1st, I was so proud to be able to celebrate two major funding announcements at two local facilities in our city with our local MPPs, Daryl Cramp and Todd Smith. The Government of Ontario is investing $1 million in two local companies through the Eastern Ontario Development Fund. The Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, Vic Fideli, made the announcement on February 1st that Sprague Foods on Colville Street East here in Belleville and Ontario Truss and Wall in Foxborough are each receiving $500,000. President Rick Sprague of Sprague Foods says they'll be investing more than $5.6 million in new equipment and the construction of a new storage facility that will create 14 new jobs. Ontario Truss and Wall is building a new 24,000 square foot facility at its current site as part of an $8.4 million investment that will also allow them to expand into two new product lines. We expect 39 new direct jobs to come from this investment and countless dozens of other indirect jobs that come as a spinoff. On February the 1st, I also had the pleasure of meeting with the Downtown Belleville Business Improvement Area's Executive Director, Louisa Sorrentino, and the new chair of the board, Stacy Kerr. We discussed the many exciting initiatives ahead in 2022 to keep downtown Belleville a vibrant area for residents and visitors, and we expect to receive their plans for the year during a deputation next month as we move forward. On February the 4th, I took part in a tour of Bridge Street United Church with Hastings County Warden Rick Phillips and spoke with staff about how their drop-in program was going, as well as the new location for the Emergency Warming Center. And during that visit, we presented certificates of appreciation to Bobby Joe Kelly, who is the Adult Services Coordinator for the John Howard Society, and Steve Vandehef, the Program Manager for Bridge Street United Church, for the important work that they are doing for our community and how grateful we are to them and their organizations. On February the 8th, I was honored to present the Humane Society of Hastings and Prince Edward with a check for $50,000 for this year's funding and received a tour of the new site at 34 Walbridge Loyalist Road. They are doing an amazing job with that construction, and we expect to, we hope to have them open and in business at the new site later this summer. The Humane Society of Hastings and Prince Edward cares for stray, surrendered, neglected, and abused animals in the Hastings and Prince Edward counties. The shelter provides a safe and caring place for up to 2,200 sick, abused, neglected, and homeless animals each year. As I said, the new facility will enable the society to provide outreach programs, community recreational activities, and support animals. And as I said, We expect them to be open in business in their new facility sometime this summer, and we wish them well. And with that, I also want to take this opportunity. It is February the 14th. It is a day celebrated around the world for love, and I want to wish everybody a very happy Valentine's Day. And with that, I will ask for a confirmatory bylaw that bylaw number 2022-21, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on February 14th, 2022, be ready first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 14th day of February 2022. May I please have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. All in favor? It's carried. And then a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody, and we will